Good morning, everyone right to go? Thank you very much for joining us here down at Police Command. A couple of things first. There will be a public health and show update later on today. I don't intend to go to those matters today. Case numbers, all of those usual details will be dealt with in a separate briefing. The second point, regrettably, I can't be here for an hour and a half today. I've got about 30 minutes. Both myself, the Minister and the Chief Commissioner, as you would understand, have got many different tasks to attend to. But I thought it was important to bring you together here so you can hear from the Chief Commissioner and that all Victorians can understand what the plans are for today and what it is that we've experienced, certainly in these last 24 hours. Can I say at the outset that the ugly scenes that we saw yesterday are not only appalling, they're unlawful. Victoria Police will take action against those who did the wrong thing yesterday. Now, the Chief Commissioner could speak to the makeup of that crowd. I think there were some people there who you would say were from the building industry. There were others who were not from the building industry. They're not there to protest, they're there for a fight. They're there to pretend to be protesting. They're from many different backgrounds. What offends me not only is the conduct, but in my job over many years I've met hundreds and thousands of builders, hundreds and thousands of tradies who build this state, whether it be removing level crossings, building hospitals and schools, all the way through to building homes. They're fine people, they're hard-working people. And what we saw yesterday is an insult to the vast, vast majority of tradies or people in the building industry who are not about wrecking, they're about building. Yesterday we saw 1,000, 2,000 people, many of whom behaved appallingly. They do not reflect, and they should not be seen to reflect, an entire industry. That would be unfair, that would be wrong. The number that is in some ways more important is that almost 90,000 people yesterday across our state went and got vaccinated. They know, as I know, that the way out of this is not violence, it's vaccination. That's the key. So why is construction having to go and get the jab? Why is vaccination compulsory in the construction industry? Well, today there are more coronavirus cases in construction than there are in aged care. There are more cases of coronavirus in the construction sector than there are patients with coronavirus in hospital across the whole hospital system. The key to that is, whether it's aged care workers or hospital workers, and indeed others, and the Deputy Premier will be out later today to announce other groups of workers in our community who are going to have to get the jab to keep our state safe. Those sectors are vaccinated, either fully or on the way to being fully vaccinated. Vaccination works. Vaccination is our pathway out of this. I thank all of those people who got vaccinated yesterday, who in their actions, not just in their words or their thoughts, but in their actions. The real demonstration yesterday was a demonstration of a state going and getting vaccinated, nearly 90,000 people. I know many people who work in this industry. The appalling conduct yesterday does not speak for them. It is not representative of them. The hundreds and thousands of people who are, in every sense of that word, builders. They're not wreckers, they're not vandals, they're builders. They build our state. I've got nothing but respect for them, and I don't think that they were in any way represented accurately, in any way, by the appalling conduct of some yesterday. That conduct's been called out. That conduct will be dealt with. I want to thank Victoria Police on behalf of all Victorians for putting themselves in harm's way to keep the rest of us safe, as they do every day. Every police family across our state will be anxious at this time to know that their loved ones are going out to do this important work. So by extension, I thank them also for their commitment and for their absolute determination to keep Victoria safe. As I throw to the Minister for Police, and then the Chief Commissioner can speak to you a bit in more detail, and then we'll take some questions. I just want to make this final point. We are so close. We are so close to meeting those vaccination targets at 70% double dose, 80% double dose, ending the lockdown, getting past this thing. Yes, it'll be a difficult time in our hospital system. We will see patients, but we are going to normalise this, and we are going to be open, and the days of lockdowns will be behind us. This sort of behaviour puts everything at risk. This sort of behaviour is unlawful, it's ugly, it will not be tolerated. But I do think it's important to say that the behaviour of a few should not be seen to cast aspersions or define an entire industry, an industry of proud, hard-working men and women. And I am gutted to have to shut this industry down, but be in no doubt there are 350 cases in construction, over 150 different sites during August and September. This is real. And unless we took this action, and unless we see compliance higher, then we will continue to see the spread of this virus, and that puts everything at risk. I think I've made my position very clear. We support police, we thank police, and we don't believe that this is something where Victorians should form a view about all construction, about all tradies. Nothing could be further from the truth. I think that was quite a diverse crowd, and not necessarily in the best sense of that word. Many different people acting appallingly under the guise of a protest or a demo. That's not what it was. It was something very different to that. And I now ask Minister Neville to add to my comments, and then the Chief Commissioner can take you through, to the extent that it's appropriate, what happened yesterday, what's happening today, and then we're happy to take a few questions. And I do regret that I do have to go and attend to other matters, but the Deputy Premier and relevant health officials will be out for the normal update of the day a bit later on in the morning. Minister.
So I'd like to just start with thanking Victoria Police members, every single one of them who over the last few days have been out dealing with violent, unacceptable behaviour from a number of, thugs, basically, thugs that have sought to cause harm, cause injury to the community and cause injury to our police officers, and we've seen that. We had three injuries yesterday. That's on top of the injuries we've seen over the weekend and the day before. That's just unacceptable. Our police officers turn up to work. They should be able to feel safe in doing that work on behalf of Victorians. And they've been doing an amazing job over the last 2 years, nearly 2 years now, in enforcing the Chief Health Officer directives. And that's what they've been tasked to do. They haven't shied away from that. And they should be able to go about doing that work without the behaviour that we saw yesterday. It's a real slap in the face to the Victorian community who have been doing it very tough. We all want these restrictions to be over, and what we saw yesterday were people that were willing to put that at risk. I mean, every police officer wants the lockdown to be over as well. So we've got to work together so that we cannot see this sort of behaviour again. So if you're thinking about coming into the city today to cause violence and harm, just know that Victoria Police will deploy whatever tactics they need to in order to ensure that you are held accountable. And they have my full support in deploying whatever tactics they need to ensure that these thugs, these violent thugs, are unable to cause further harm to our city and to our community. So again, to all those police officers who have been out over the last few days, putting their lives on the line for the Victorian community and to help us get out of that, I thank you. You've got our support, the government support, my support as Police Minister, and again the message, do not come into the city today if your intention is to continue to spread this virus and continue to cause violence on our streets. I'll ask the Chief Commissioner to say a few words.
Thanks, Minister. I held a press conference yesterday, so have already spoken about the outcome of yesterday's protests. We did see 62 arrests. It was a protest following on from the day before outside the CFMEU, where we saw violence as well. And we saw, of course, the protest on the weekend, on Saturday, a freedom rally. So we've had significant unrest in Melbourne over the last few days. Look, I certainly understand that people are fatigued. They're tired, they've got grievances and they're frustrated. But now is not the time for protest. The Chief Health Officer has still determined that there are guidelines in place that prohibit mass gatherings, large gatherings and groups of people, and the risk of the spread of the coronavirus is quite real in those gatherings. So we will do everything we can to stop the gatherings in compliance with the Chief Health Officer guidelines. We don't get to pick and choose what are the laws we enforce. I'd simply say this. I would implore, I'd plead, I'd ask any other word that I can use to say to people who are contemplating coming in here today, to protest, do not do so. You're not going to be welcomed with open arms, I can assure you of that. What is going to occur, Victoria Police have planned, we have significant tactics in place, we will be agile in our response, we will be very swift in our response, and conduct, as we've seen yesterday and the previous day, will not be tolerated. I'm not going to step through the amount of police that we're going to have on deck today. I'm not going to talk about what our tactics are. Safe to say that those tactics will be different, and we have significant police numbers. I do not want to be giving any context whatsoever to anybody who may be considering coming in here to engage in unlawful activity. Just in regards to what we have seen in the last few days, we've seen groups that do contain people from the construction industry, they do contain tradespeople, but they contain a range of other people. We know from what we've been monitoring that people are being encouraged to put on high-vis gear, to put on workwear, to come in under the cover of a crowd, and not necessarily tradespeople, but people who are tied up with the Freedom Rally, people who are tied up with other issue-motivated groups who seek to hide under the cover of this demonstration. We know that's occurring. So it's a very mixed crowd. It lacks leadership, and what we've seen is it's prepared to be confrontational and violent. As I said, we will take all actions that we can to stop this. I would really ask people not to come in. Now is not the time to protest. And you've seen that we have a range of crowd control equipment that we've already deployed, and I have instructed my police commanders, if that's necessary to use, then they are to use it. We will, of course, factor in the safety of all individuals, because that's what we're about, community safety. But the reality is this protest can't be allowed to occur again. I'm happy to take questions or defer to the Minister or the Premier.
Yesterday was a 7-hour cat and mouse game through the city. Will we be seeing that again?
I'm not going to talk about the tactics we'll deploy today, but I'd be very surprised if you see any cat and mouse games today.
Can you give any indication on how many police resources? I know you said it was quite vague, but are we talking the same level? Are we talking double what we saw?
We're talking more than the 500 police we had there yesterday, but I'm not going to say what numbers are there. I don't intend to try and give any perceived advantage or any context to any person who may be organising or coming in for a protest. I want them to be completely unaware of what we're going to do and what capacity they may face.
Can you guarantee, though, that there won't be a situation where members of the public are sitting in their cars on freeways surrounded by these people?
Oh, no police commissioner anywhere in the world can give any guarantee when you have a large group of several thousand angry men predominantly intent on taking over an area or being confrontational with police. No law enforcement agency anywhere in the world or commissioner can give any guarantees to that.
But why would
the only guarantee I can give you is that we will act swiftly and we will do everything we can to prevent that occurring.
But why were they allowed to walk through the city for hours at one point when they were making their way up to the freeway without police in sight?
You're talking about people being allowed to walk through the city. It's a very difficult, challenging environment when you have a significant large group that is mobile, that is active, and that refuses all instructions, refuses to comply with requests, and is leaderless. We took as many actions as we could yesterday to try and stop them inconveniencing or causing any injury to the members of the public. By and large, that outcome yesterday, whilst tremendously inconvenient and absolutely scary and frightening to people who are sitting in their cars, I absolutely concede that that is not what we wanted to occur. But what we saw yesterday, we've seen at least 3 police officers who were injured, a journalist who was attacked. Other than that, though, by and large, our tactics meant that members of the community weren't injured. So that's a very reasonable outcome. The complexities of trying to control a crowd like that and tactically trying to stop them moving around is a huge issue. But as I say, we learn from every demonstration, every protest, every criminal activity we're involved in. We debrief and we become more agile, more flexible, and we become better every time. We'll debrief yesterday's demonstration and we'll also learn from that.
Have you identified neo-Nazis in the crowd?
We have, and I'm not clear on whether we had right-wing extremism yesterday present in the crowd. We have over the last couple of protests, we've had representation from those groups and we are aware they're participating.
Did the police moving too late on the bridge? Could the police have moved in any earlier to stop that scenario from happening?
Look, hindsight's a wonderful thing, and it's a very easy thing to sit back in an armchair and consider what could have, should have, or might have occurred. All I can say is that was a very fluid and very challenging environment that took place yesterday. The police commanders who were involved, the police on the ground, did everything they could to ensure public safety. We'll review and see whether there were opportunities that we might have missed, and if we did, we'll improve on those.
Yesterday morning there was a point right at the start when there were only a few hundred protesters where the riot squad were moving in. They gave 2 or 3 warnings and they said you are going to be dispersed. They then waited about 30 minutes and that was the point at which the group moved on to Parliament and then the walking began. Was that morning a missed opportunity, and will you make that same tactical decision this time around, or will you go hard early?
I'm not going to tell you what our tactics will be today, other than to say we won't be tolerating criminal conduct. Whether a missed opportunity occurred at a certain point in time yesterday in one of numerous locations, it's not for me to stand here and second guess from the Victoria Police Centre the tactics of those operational members on the ground, whether there was a missed opportunity. They take in a range of different considerations: safety, public, opportunity, resourcing, location. There's just so many factors that are dynamic in these circumstances, and so we'll step through it in the clear light of day in these next couple of days and see whether there were opportunities where we might have acted earlier, and we'll learn from that if that is the case.
Premier, is there any chance that you'll change your view on mandatory vaccines in construction?
Mandatory vaccination of the construction sector is a decision of the Chief Health Officer, and it is essential. As I just said to you, there are more cases of COVID in construction than there are in aged care. Aged care is vaccinated, construction is not vaccinated. It is important if we want to get this industry open, and that's what motivates all of us. We want this industry open, and we've worked so hard to keep it open right throughout this pandemic. That's why people who've been closed for the best part of 2 years must be scratching their heads and be furious to think that an industry that's been open has had to be closed because we've got cases, because we've got real compliance issues. There were real compliance issues in the lead up to that decision. The decision to close it is on health advice. I want to get it open as soon as we can. I do not, however, believe, I don't believe that this is a decision that was, I know it was not a decision taken lightly. I believe it was the right decision, Rich, and we've got to get this sector vaccinated, and it won't be the last sector that has to get vaccinated.
Will you consider, given you want to get the sector back open, will you consider opening sites where staff are vaccinated and they've shown they complied ahead of the 2-week schedule?
Well, I don't want to get ahead of that 2-week schedule, but of course, if we can see this sort of activity, stop, if we can see, a calm come to this as a reset, well, then we'll have more options, won't we, than currently we do. It wasn't a decision taken lightly. We don't want to have a situation where the virus is just running rampant through this industry, because it's a big industry, and it puts at risk all of our targets, all of our hospital services capacity. No worker in construction or any other industry has an entitlement to make the work of our nurses harder. No one has that entitlement. Please go and get vaccinated. And you know what? All the feedback I'm getting from state clinics, from GPs and from community pharmacy is that tradies, so-called, are going and getting vaccinated. You heard from the head of the Pharmacy Guild just the other day. He's got a pharmacy out in the outer southeast. He ran out of vials. He ran out of doses of AstraZeneca on Saturday because there were so many people from the building and construction industry coming to his pharmacy to get the jab. There were 90,000 people got vaccinated yesterday. There are 1,000, 2,000 people behaving in an ugly, awful, criminal way. I think the 90,000 number, that's a number that we should focus on. And a good number of them were people who work in the trades. They know and understand that the best way to protect yourself and your family from serious illness is to get vaccinated. Not to be violent, but to be vaccinated.
Why did you not stand up yesterday and call for calm? Why did we not see you yesterday and call for
Simon, I think if you were to check the record, there will be no politician in this country that has done more media more regularly than me. I don't go out. Well, I don't.
The situation that was going on out there.
I don't attend media conferences every day. I had other matters to deal with. The Treasurer was out, other members of the government were out. I don't do a media conference every single day. And I'm uncomfortable today about the fact that I'm not going to be able to stand here for an hour and a half and deal with every single question, but that's what has to happen. I've got things I've got to go and do, as do the Chief Commissioner and the Minister. But I'm happy to put my record of fronting up and the hours I've spent talking to you and others and the regularity with which I've done that, but I don't do a conference every day. Sometimes I can't, for a whole range of reasons.
Yesterday we saw some of the greatest scenes of civil unrest in the state's history, though. Didn't Victorians need to hear from their leader?
Well, you can make whatever conclusion you want, Rachel, and I expect you will. I've answered that question.
Were you troubled by the scenes? What do you think it said about the
Well, I've just
state of
described them.
society?
Paul, I've just described them as ugly, unlawful, absolutely unacceptable. I can't be any clearer than that.
On the shutdown of construction, given there were 337 cases across the industry, should it not have been shut down earlier, given we've shut down industries for far longer?
That's a very important point. I don't know whether it would necessarily have made a significant difference, but we won't know that. What we have to focus on now is what we can change, and that is people getting vaccinated so we can get this industry back open again, and also making sure that the rules are followed at building sites large and small. And the reports that we had been getting are very significant issues of non-compliance, people just not taking those safety rules seriously. And the thing about it is that that's a matter of fatigue. Like, safety is a very serious cultural issue in a broader sense on every building site. So it speaks to fatigue, I think, and speaks to those sorts of issues, but we can't allow ourselves to be fatigued. We've got to get on, get through this, get vaccinated, be safe while we do it, and get the industry open so we can have every industry open. That's what vaccination does. And we're so close. We're so close to being able to end this lockdown and put this behind us. We've just got to focus on that, on getting vaccinated, not on being violent. That achieves nothing. It doesn't work against this virus.
Does
Sorry,
this
that's
pause the
September
roadmap?
23rd
What does this
deadline.
actually mean for the roadmap you've announced?
No, there's no
You
impact.
alluded to before that this could set things back.
Well,
What
yeah,
does that actually
well, the
mean?
words could. It hasn't yet, and if it does, I'll be happy to update you. But the roadmap proceeds. This industry, though, is closed at the moment. I want to get it open, and the way to get it open is for people to get vaccinated. And the good news is many tens of thousands, perhaps even more, members of this industry are going and getting the jab. That's a good thing.
Do you think that's
And I don't think that those who are protesting, I think protesters are probably not the right word. It was something very different to a protest. It was ugly.
Do you call it a riot?
Well, whether you want to call it a riot, a fray, ugly scenes, terror, whatever, you can scarcely find a word to adequately describe what we saw yesterday. That's why Victorian Police are not tolerating this. Not yesterday and not today. And I support the Commissioner, the Chief Commissioner, not necessarily sharing with criminal elements every tactic, every decision that he's going to make. They've got a clear strategy. I'm briefed on it, I have confidence in it, and every member of Victoria Police are out there working very hard, and I thank them. And I also acknowledge their families. This will be a very stressful time for them. Everyone wants these rules off. Everyone wants this lockdown over. Let's get that done, and we can. It's literally within reach. It's literally within reach. Let's not any of us do anything to spread the virus. Let's not any of us do anything to put at risk the fact that we are so close to opening up, to being free, to getting back to the normality that we absolutely crave.
So that's the September 23rd deadline where they've received their first jab. Sorry, I was...
Sure, yeah, and that's why I'm going to you now.
Thank you, cheers. So September 23rd, obviously it's tomorrow, that's when we were intended to see the construction industry having their first jab. What percentage of the industry is currently vaccinated, and why can't those that are vaccinated continue working?
Well, there's a couple of points. One, I don't have the exact vaccination update number. That might be something that the health briefing later in the day can take you to. In terms of the industry being partially open and partially closed, there was the view of both industry leaders, union leaders, and our public health officials, and I think just common sense tells you, look, some of the stuff we've seen yesterday and the day before, if you had some of the sector open, you could potentially see those scenes at a very localised level. That would be unsafe. And the view was, not just from a public health point of view, but in a broader context, those who know this industry best put the view to government that it would not be safe to have some open and some closed. It needed and needs still a reset. I'm not pleased about that. I'm gutted to have to shut down this industry. We've all worked so hard to keep it open for the whole duration of this pandemic event. But I can't just see cases ticking up and up and up, people not wearing their masks, no compliance in not every site, but many sites. You can't ignore that. So you have to act. And that's why it's not a choice to get vaccinated. the speed at which this Delta thing is moving through construction sites, as I said, 350 odd cases, 150 odd sites, large and small, taking the virus to regional Victoria, shutting whole regional communities down. Like, you can't just sit by and let that happen. You just can't, particularly when you've got a Chief Health Officer advice that says here is a different strategy. Yes, difficult, challenging, but that is the advice, and it's on that basis that we've acted.
New South Wales is allowing unvaccinated workers to attend their work sites come Monday. Why can't you follow suit?
Well, we may be able to at a point in the future, but I'm not here today to announce that today. And let me be really clear. For media, for every family, these rules will not change because of the conduct of some of the people that were out there yesterday. I don't speak for the construction industry. A goodly number of them have never been near a construction site. They're there for all manner of different reasons. There were some from that industry there, but like the notion that that's a group of people that speak for the industry, no, they do not. There were ugly scenes yesterday and many hundreds of people out there. There were thousands more, in fact tens of thousands more, going and getting vaccinated. And quite a few of them were from the construction sector. So there's no campaign that's going to get run here to change these rules. But we're not tolerating this sort of behaviour. Let's all do the right thing and we can get the industry open again. And that'll be a very, very good day.
So are you confident there's public appetite today for really strong, forceful policing? Do you sense that?
Well, I'm not someone who wakes up in the morning and, you know, takes an opinion poll on whether the police should do the right thing to uphold the law. Like, police will do their job and they'll know they've got my full support. And I think, Paul, that there is very strong support for police to do whatever they can to avoid the sort of stuff we saw yesterday. I don't think anybody thinks that that's appropriate. But again, I'm not so much... This is not about public opinion. It's about getting the job done.
They have a range of tactics, though.
Yeah, they do.
Are you comfortable with them using the upper limit of those tactics?
Well, what I'd say to you, Paul, is that our government, proudly, have funded every single one of the capabilities that you've been talking about in recent days. When we came to government, police did not have these non-lethal force options. They just didn't. They did not have them. They did not exist. They do now, but as to when and how and if they're deployed, that's not a matter for politicians, and you would never want me, I would never want to say anything that would see a commander of a police operation doubt for even a second whether they should do what their judgment and their training and their skills and the circumstances dictate. They have to have that operational freedom, and they do. What my job is to back them to make those calls, but also to give them the resources that they need. And whether it's all the different, I know you've had lots of discussions in recent days about all the different equipment, the different types of things that police have access to, have all been funded by this government. And it just means that police have many more tools and many more options, and that's very, very important.
This is the first sector we've seen retaliate against mandatory vaccines. Are you concerned we're going to see more of this behaviour?
I would certainly hope not. I would simply say to you that nurses are not out in the streets, and a National Cabinet made a decision last Friday that everybody in the health system is going to be vaxxed. They haven't had a tea room in 2 years. Nurses and health staff are out, rain, hail or shine, sitting outside, having their breaks. Victoria Police members, they don't get a tea room. Ambos don't get a tea room. Construction stayed open, and I reckon there'd be a lot of people sitting at home who haven't been able to go to work for sad, but for the best of reasons, and they'd just be scratching their heads. How could you be upset to be open and have to abide by rules? Well, now that industry's shut, and I'm upset about that. I'm gutted to have to make that decision. I want to get it open again. The way to do it is for people to follow the rules and to get vaccinated. And, pleasingly, apart from a pretty small minority in the scheme of things, it's a big industry, I think a lot of people are doing that. They are doing the right thing, and that means we will be able to reopen.
The scenes of the past 2 days have been extremely distressing, probably some of the worst our city's ever seen. What's your message to those that have not taken part of this, that look at these scenes and worry for the city of Melbourne, for the state of Victoria? Well, what do you say to them?
Well, everything I've said today is fundamentally directed to them. I'm not so much interested in trying to communicate with people who think violence is the answer, and that's a small number of people. But Victoria Police will deal with them. In terms of the broader community, we're better than this, we're stronger than this. Victoria Police will keep our state safe. I would just appeal to people, keep going, getting the jab. keep following the rules. That's what the vast majority of people, including tradies and construction workers, are doing. They're following the rules, the vast majority of them. They're getting vaccinated, they're playing their part, and they're helping us to get out of this lockdown, beyond this pandemic, and back to something like normal. Construction's closed now. It can be reopened. In fact, all industries can be reopened if people just play their part. Violence, no. Vaccination, yes. That's our way forward.
Can it be reopened without mandatory vaccination? Is there any hope for these people protesting?
No, it's been closed. Vaccination is mandatory, and only those who are vaccinated, as per the decision that's been made, will be back on sites.
Are you worried?
That is the position of the Chief Health Officer. Now, if that advice changes, then again, I don't make those decisions. They're made under the Public Health and Wellbeing Act. There's a process to go through. He doesn't make those decisions. They're not made lightly. There's a proper process to consider all the pros and cons, and I think the Chief Health Officer at some length yesterday went to this issue and explained what his thinking is. They're not flippant decisions. The Deputy Premier, as I said, will be out later this morning to add another group of workers. So it's not like people are, unfairly focusing on construction. That's where the cases are. 350 of them. More cases in construction than aged care. More cases in construction than any other sector, pretty well. I stand to be corrected on that, but certainly 350 across 150 different locations is a big part. It's more than a trend. It's something you've got to deal with. You can't ignore that, and that's what the Chief Health Officer and Cabinet have done.
Are you worried that we're going to be standing up here? You're going to be standing up here next week after they're promising to be here every day, protesters. Are you worried that we're going to just have rolling protests?
Well, we'll wait and see. We will wait and see, but I think it's unwise to test the resolve of Victoria Police. Victoria Police will do what has to be done to keep our state safe. And my resolve to get through this roadmap, to deliver it, to get our state open, to get past this, that shouldn't be doubted either. Vaccination, that's not violence, vaccination. That's what protects us, that's what opens us up, that's what gets the lockdown off. That's what sees us around the kitchen table at Christmas, healthy, with the people that we love. Everyone wants that. That's what I'm working towards. Like, if protest worked, we'd just have a big demo, Rich, wouldn't we? But it doesn't. It doesn't work. Only getting vaccinated works. Sorry.
Have you spoken to the Prime Minister about what's happening, unfolding in Melbourne?
No, I haven't.
Spoken with John?
I think it would be the acting Prime Minister, probably, wouldn't it be? I think.
Have you spoken with John Secker?
No, I have not spoken to union leaders. That matter has been delegated to the Treasurer, and I think he spoke at length about that. There might be other ministers from portfolio point of view that have spoken to union leaders, but the Treasurer has spoken with industry leaders and heads, those both formerly from industry associations, master builders, those sort of groups, but also large employers, a wide range of unions. This needed to be reset. It has been. I know that comes at a cost. I prefer it was very different. I prefer I had different advice. I don't. But let's get it open again. And protests and violence won't do that. Only hard work and getting vaccinated will get this industry open again. And that's what the vast majority of people in this industry want. It's what I want. No government's employed more people in this industry than ours over the 7 years we've been in power. Honestly, we're very strong supporters of this industry, but we're also very strong supporters of getting out of lockdown. And it had to be shut down in order to achieve that.
350 cases in an industry of 320,000 people. Is that not an argument to do it site by site rather than a blanket shutdown?
No, but I think you've got to have a look, Rich, that it's an industry of 320,000, but it's also one of the very few industries that are open. Like, you're not getting cases in retail. There's not 350 cases in retail because retail's shut. It's click and collect only. You're not getting 350 cases in pubs and restaurants because they're takeaway only. And they're the people, I think, who are right to be angry when they turn the TV on and see this sort of stuff. Like, they're at home. They're not working. They've not been able to work throughout the whole pandemic. This industry has. Let's not focus on what we can't change. Compliance has been a problem. I'm pretty confident, in fact, I'm certain that compliance is going to lift. And we are going to see people wearing their masks. Just like they wear their high-vis and their hard hat, they've got to wear their mask. Safety is not just about stuff that you can see. It's also about this virus. And it's got to be taken as seriously on the job and on sites as any other safety issue. I'm very confident that we'll see compliance increase. I'm very confident that we'll see people get vaccinated, and then we'll be able to get the place open again.
Just regarding mandatory vaccines, what industries are next would you consider mandating vaccines for the public sector, for example?
There'll be announcements made based on the very detailed considerations and determinations that the Chief Health Officer makes. I wish I could just do a whole blanket list, but he has to go through a process so that that's properly, legally done. But to that end, the Deputy Premier will be out later today and he'll make further announcements about other groups. So again, I just make the point, it's not about people unfairly picking on the construction sector. That's where the cases are. So that's where the mandatory vax, the required vax decision is. But then there are other industries where we can get ahead of cases, where we can have people vaccinated and prevent cases from spreading.
Just to Richard's question, I know you've got to go. 300 cases in hundreds of thousands of worker industry, 300 cases out of 6,000 active cases.
Yeah.
The decisions last week to mandate vaccines with only kind of a 2-week notice period compared to 3 months for aged care workers. A decision to ban tea rooms, which building companies and unions and industry groups all said was misguided because it didn't understand the practicality of how building sites were laid out. There was widespread anger on the phone calls with unions and government officials on whatever it was the night you shut it down about how Brett Sutton's team communicated with industry in terms of the consultation.
I don't know if that's accurate.
Was the government's handling of the health directions what led to this?
No, not at all.
What do you say to the coalition of building unions who have said that they described it as a heavy-handed approach and they've claimed that it drove some of their members towards the anti-vax members?
That's not what they're indicating to me. It's not what they're indicating.
What their
through
statement
others.
says.
They put in a statement.
Well, fine. You can put as many statements out as you like. At the end of the day, the government's done what had to be done with the support of construction unions. They're very clear that this reset was needed. That's the advice that I have. What I'd ask of those union leaders and all leaders across our community, let's focus on what we can change. Let's encourage everyone to go and get vaccinated. That's what will get us open, and not just construction, but every single industry. That's what I'm working day and night on. I do now have to go and do other things, as I'm sure the Chief Commissioner and the Minister for Police have to do. And there will be a further briefing, the normal health briefing later on in the day, where you can ask any and all questions.
Can I just ask one question? Sorry. Has any communication been had with the Commonwealth Government about potential ADF support for Victoria Police today or in the coming weeks?
I've certainly not engaged on those terms. That'd have to be, that would be something that in the normal course of events, the Chief Commissioner would ask for that. No such request has been made. I believe Victoria Police have all the resources that they need, all the capability that they need, and the resolve that they need to deal with these issues. But let's hope they don't need to. Let's hope people make much better choices today. But if they make the wrong choice, if they make ugly choices, then Victoria Police will deal with that. Violence is not the answer. Vaccination is the answer. That's really clear. And the good thing is, there are plenty of people in high-vis at state vaccination hubs yesterday and at GP clinics and pharmacies getting the jab to protect themselves, to protect their families and to protect every family and to get their industry open. That's what we need to focus on. But be in no doubt, Victoria Police have what they need, including a steely resolve to keep every Victorian family safe. Thanks very much, everyone.